Good morning and welcome to the August 22nd, 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If there are any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, please fill out a speaker request form to the left of the dais and hand it to the staff seated over there. Fill it out with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, approval of the August 8th, 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, is hereby opened.
Move approval.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve the August 8th minutes, and Mike Kwasny seconded that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Morning. Item number 2 is 19 VA 009, a variance request for a property located at 708 11th Street. In particular, the applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum required lot size from 6,500 square feet to 2,700 square feet. Currently, it's an existing small lot. They're also requesting a variance to reduce the front yard setback from 20 feet to 12 feet and to reduce the rear yard setback from 25 feet to 13.6 feet. And this is for the existing structure located on the property. It's also located within the West Boulevard Historic District. So here we have an aerial showing the current dwelling on the property. The applicant is not proposing to expand the dwelling. They're just looking for variances for the existing structure on there. Property zone medium density residential district, and the future land use is urban neighborhood. And then in relation to our major street plan, it's off of West Boulevard, and Quincy Street is also identified as a collector street, but this is located southeast of the corner or intersection of Kansas City Street and 11th Street. Site plan provided by the applicant showing the setbacks that are existing today. So this would be from the alley. We have a 5.5 foot side yard setback on that north side. However, because this is a small lot, that setback is in compliance because the combination of side yards must be total of 12 feet, with one being no less than 4 feet. So that one's okay. What we're looking for is the variance for the front yard at 12 and the rear yard at 13.6. Without those variances, were the structure to burn down, they could only build back a dwelling that's about 5 feet in width. So this would be substantial justice in that consideration. Applicant's photo of the existing dwelling, staff's photo, and this is looking at property to the north. Looking north along 11th Street towards the intersection with Kansas City Street. Directly across the street to the west, and looking south along 11th Street. With that, due to the existing location of the existing structure on the property, special circumstance being that it's a small lot and pretty narrow, staff is recommending that the variance request be approved. Are there any questions for staff? The applicant is in the audience if there are any questions.
Thanks, Fletcher. No requests up currently. Look for any questions or a motion then.
Make a motion to approve. I make a motion to approve the variance based on the small lot and the special circumstances that are there.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve the variance. Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. That takes us to the end of the zoning board of adjustment part of the morning. I'd look for a motion to adjourn zoning board of adjustment. All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to adjourn. Rachel seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. We will now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for August 22nd, 2019. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, please fill out a speaker request form for the item you wish to speak on. And again, if you have a cell phone or other electronic device, please keep it on silent or step out to the hallway if you need to take a call. On the consent calendar today, items 1 through 10 have been placed on consent and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 2, 19 PD 034. Item 3, 19 PD 035. Item 6, 19 UR 017. And item 7, 19 UR 018. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these 4 items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 10 that staff would like to remove?
Item 8, please.
Okay. Any items 1 through 10 that the Planning Commission, any planning commissioners would like removed? And are there any items 1 through 10 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? All right, the chair would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 through 10 in accordance with staff's recommendation with the exception of item number 8. All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. Rachel seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 8 is a vacation of right-of-way to reduce the right-of-way width from 60 feet to 52 feet for a street known as Knuckle Duster Road outside the city limits in a subdivision known as Murphy Ranch Estates. That right-of-way was originally platted years ago, and now the developer is platting additional lots along that existing right-of-way. We noted that they had 8 additional foot of right-of-way beyond what the classification for the street would require per city street design standards, and he submitted a vacation of right-of-way to reduce that by that 8 feet. We accepted that application, routed it around, and the attorney's office brought it to our attention that the city is not the street authority. That is right-of-way that once created goes to the county highway department, and that the county, based on state statute, has the authority to vacate that right-of-way. So we have notified the applicant. He will be submitting that application to the county, and for today we would request that you table this item.
All right.
So moved.
Okay. Karen moved to table item number 8, and Mike Kwasny seconded that motion. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. All right, that moves us to the regular agenda. Item number 11, the agent on this item has asked that we consider moving this one to the end of the regular agenda. If the commission would concur with that, we could go ahead with it.
I make a
Okay, we'll put it after item 16, I think, is our end.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen made that motion and Rachel seconded the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll then move to item number 12.
Thank you. Item number 12 is a major amendment to a plan development overlay to allow an oversized garage at the end of Huntington Place. The applicant is intending to construct a 2,368 square foot, two-story garage addition onto their property. Subject property is 5.04 acres in size and is zoned low-density residential district. You can see its location at the end of Huntington Place, bordered by Park Forest on the south. The city's future land use for the property identifies it as low-density neighborhood. And on the city's major street plan, Huntington Place is identified as a local street. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. It's a little difficult to see. The existing single-family residence on the property is approximately 6,000 square feet in size. It's located on the northern end of the property up here. What the applicant is requesting is to construct an oversized garage on the south portion of the property behind that single-family residence. The garage itself is a two-story garage, and the applicant has requested a height exception to allow a height of 29 feet for an accessory structure in lieu of the 15 feet required. The garage itself will be intended for storage, and then on the upper story of the garage, he intends to have some type of wood shop or additional storage area on that second floor. The garage itself, as I mentioned, is 2,368 square feet, and the existing single-family residence is approximately 6,000 square feet. That residence only has a two-stall garage with it currently, so the applicant would like to add in more garage space for the property in the future. This is a rendering of the proposed garage, noting its color and the stone accents that will be on the front of the garage. And again, this garage will be located back behind the house on the south side, shielded from the street. Sorry, just 1 second. Having a little difficulty with the keys, sorry. Okay. This is the exterior elevations of the garage. Again, just noting that height, that they are requesting the exception for 29 feet in lieu of 15 feet required, showing the stalls for the garage, and that it'll be bermed up on one side. The subject property does have a significant slope running from the north and increasing in elevation to the south, so it'll be bermed up against that hillside. This is the foundation plan submitted with the application. And the second story showing that area that will be dedicated as a storage or wood shop for the garage. The Rapid City Fire Department has noted that due to the size of the lot, the location in the wildland-urban interface, and also the potential use on the second story, the applicant will need to work with the Rapid City Fire Department for fire protection for the proposed structure if this is approved. I was able to visit the site and take a few photos. This is its location at the end of Huntington Place, looking back to the south and east. This is a view back down to the north and west at the rest of the residential neighborhood. And this is the location behind the house where the garage will actually be located. So this is looking from the southeast back to the northwest. And the garage will be located over in this area here specifically. And let me see if I can find the photo of the actual residence so you can see how the tones will match. This is taken from Huntington Place, showing the stone accents on the existing residence, and again, the garage will be located back behind this house. With that, staff would recommend approval of the major amendment to the plan development overlay to allow the oversized garage with the stipulations as noted in the project report. Staff will be available for questions at this time if you have any.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff right now? Thoughts? All right. Mike Goller made the motion to approve item number 12 with stipulations.
Second.
And Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13.
Okay. Item number 13 is a major amendment to the plan development overlay to allow a retail development at 3645 Sturgis Road. This is a property that we've seen multiple phases of development on in the last 18 months. This final phase is again to adjust the parking requirements on the property in light of a new use occupying the building. The subject property is 1.28 acres in size and is located along Sturgis Road and Trailview Drive. This is the location of the old Freed's Furniture Building, which had a structural fire in 2017 and has since been redeveloped in multiple phases. As part of those phases, a child care center was approved in March of 2018, and a second child care center was approved in October of 2018. In May of this year, we reviewed a major amendment to the plan development overlay because one of those child care centers vacated the building, changing the parking requirements, and this application was brought forward because the other child care center has also vacated the building, again adjusting those parking requirements on the property. The subject property is zoned general commercial district and is located within the plan development overlay. The future land use for the property identifies it as mixed-use commercial. On the city's major street plan, Sturgis Road is identified as a principal arterial street, and Trailview Drive is a local street. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. There are multiple uses in the building that have been previously approved, including an archery range, some medical offices, church use, and optometrist. At this point, both spaces that had been previously occupied by the child care centers are now going to be developed for retail or office use. The applicant submitted operation plan identifies that staff for both of those spaces are going to be limited. So the parking requirement, the exception that they're requesting is to allow 71 parking spaces in lieu of the 119 spaces that are now required, with office use occupying the majority of the building at this point. Based on their varied hours of operation for the specific uses and the limited number of employees for these new uses that are moving into the old child care suite, staff would recommend approval of the exception request to reduce that parking requirement to 71 spaces. This is again just showing the second level of the structure and how some of the parking and uses in the building will occur together. Sorry, just one second. I was able to visit the site, take a few photos. This is the optometrist suite at the northern end of the building, showing some of the uses and the parking available. View back to the north along Sturgis Road. View across Sturgis Road to the east. View back to the south along Sturgis Road. And a view back to the west across Trailview Drive. At this point, staff would recommend approval of the major amendment to the plan development overlay to allow the retail development with the exception as requested and with stipulations as noted in the project report. If you have any questions for staff, it'd be available at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions on this item? All right. Rachel made the motion to approve item 13 with stipulations, and Kurt seconded that motion. Justin, I don't know if it matters, but would you like to abstain from
I need to
that?
abstain from this vote, yeah.
Justin is going to abstain from item 13. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 14 is a major amendment to a plan development to expand the Super Clean Car Wash located at 1501 Campbell Street. This is just south of the fairgrounds and the soccer fields, located directly to the north along Campbell Street. John tells me that our buttons are sticking, so if you'll bear with me, see what we can do to... This is an aerial of the property showing the current layout. The car wash was originally approved and constructed in 1995. It consists now of a drive-through tunnel car wash, 6 self-service bays, and 5 vacuum stations. The property is currently zoned general commercial. which is in line with the mixed-use commercial designation as shown on the city's future land use plan. The major street plan identifies Campbell Street as a principal arterial street. And this is the layout of the site. The amendment is to address several items. One is a 32 by 32 foot extension onto the west end of the car wash. Secondly, they will be relocating some vacuum stations in this area. Currently, upon surveying the site, it was identified that those stations are actually over on the city property where we have soccer fields, and they'll be relocating them onto the subject property. In order to do that, there's an existing water line and a fire hydrant on the applicant's property that will be moved to the city property. So we're getting the utilities on city property and the portions of the car wash on the developer's property, as they should be. There is a pay station that you drive in and come up to pay to go to the car wash. And that currently sits within a 26-foot wide access easement that was secured several years ago when this property was subdivided, placing the storage units to the west on a standalone lot and the car wash on its own lot. And that 26-foot wide parking and circulation aisle allows for those that are using the storage units to access it, and for those that are lining up for the tunnel car wash to stack within that area. So they're slightly moving the pay station to the east, so outside of that 26-foot wide easement. Lastly, and I think we're going to get to this in the next slide, we are getting some landscaping. Currently that site is pretty void, and what this shows us is that there will be landscaping along Campbell Street and along that south lot line between this property and Dairy Queen, which will be a great improvement to this area. So John is right, you hit the button and it moves several times, or it doesn't move at all. This is an elevation just showing that it will be an extension onto the existing car wash. This is a sign package provided by the applicant showing that there is a pole sign, there is an LED reader board on the smaller portion of that pole sign that was previously approved by Planning Commission, and then of course the super clean. Again, just a close-up of it. We went out and visited the site. The sign is posted as needed. You can kind of see the vacuums there to the west of the sign that will be relocated. The front elevation of the car wash. And the back my goodness. And the back elevation, that's the area where you see the white car going in that will have the 32 by 32 foot expansion. As a part of this request, they have identified that there are and have been, since the origination of this car wash, 2 stacking bays for the self-service stations. The tunnel car wash will have the 3 as required, and they've requested an exception to only require 2 for the self-service bays, again providing 3 for the tunnel. The history of the site since 1995 has shown that they've not needed more than that 2. It hasn't created any conflict with circulation within the site. So staff is in support of reducing the parking requirement for the self-service bays from 3 stacking spaces to 2 stacking spaces. And again, that's the self-service station that'll move slightly to the east. There's the vacuums that'll be moved over to the south onto the property. Looking north on Campbell Street and looking south on Campbell Street. And the boulevard that you see will have some landscaping in it, which I think will just be a great asset to this stretch of Campbell Street. So staff is recommending that this item be approved with stipulations, noting that stipulation number 1 is an exception request be granted to reduce the stacking for the self-service bays from 3 stacking spaces to 2. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm here. Otherwise, our recommendation is to approve.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicki, I read in the request from the applicant that the city is responsible for moving the water line and the hydrant. Is that what's going to occur?
No, I didn't read that, Karen, and Janelle just indicated no as well.
Okay.
That will be something that they do. They will be coordinating with the city
Right.
so that where they place it on city property meets with our review and approval, but they will be doing that.
Okay, maybe I misread it. It was in parentheses, so I
Well,
just didn't know.
coordinating with the city, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Kurt?
And maybe I missed it in your presentation, Vicki, but where are they going to move the vacuum cleaning station to? Are they just sliding it to the south? or
Just
they-
sliding it slightly to the south onto their property,
Okay.
which now has the water line and the fire hydrant. Moving those to the north, they're swapping. Vacuums on private-owned property, utilities on city-owned property.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Vicki. Any other questions for staff on this? Comments? Anyone ready to make a motion? Okay. Kurt made the motion to approve item number 14 per the staff recommendations.
Second.
And Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15.
Thank you. Item number 15 is a conditional use permit to allow on-sale liquor use in conjunction with an existing furniture and decor store at 1141 Deadwood Avenue. The subject property is approximately 2.08 acres in size and is zoned general commercial district. The future land use for the property identifies it as light industrial. On the city's major street plan, Deadwood Avenue is identified as a principal arterial street. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. It's worth noting that there will be no structural changes to the property. Rare Finds Decor occupies one of the suites in the existing structure here in the center of the property. And what they've requested is to allow on-sale liquor use for special craft events, demos, product launches, etc. that will occur occasionally. It's not going to be something necessarily that when you walk into the store that it'll be available each time. It's more focused on special events and more monthly and so forth from that point, that it'll be an occasional on-sale liquor used for some of their events on the property. Other retail businesses in the city have started to adopt this type of special event promo for on-sale liquor use in order to encourage more retail shopping in person to compete with online shopping and so forth. So this is something that we have seen in the city for other properties. We've even seen it for another furniture store. Fifth and Main Furniture here downtown received a similar request in December of this past year. As such, staff would recommend approval of the conditional use permit to allow the on-sale liquor use for the property, operating in conjunction with the applicant's operation plan for special events, craft events, and so forth. This is the rendering of the signage on the property that currently exists. Again, just noting that it's one of the suites within the building. The property itself is not located close to any residential districts. It's over 3,000 feet from the nearest residential area. There are also no other on-sale uses that are currently operating in the immediate vicinity. There have been some that have been previously approved on this property that are no longer in operation. This is the site photo that I was able to take when I visited the site, showing the sign up in the window. Again, just a shot of the store itself. View back to the south along Deadwood Avenue. View to the east across Deadwood Avenue. The view back to the north along Deadwood Avenue. With that, staff would recommend approval of the conditional use permit to allow on-sale liquor use with an existing furniture and decor store with stipulations as noted in the project report. If you have any questions, be available at this time. Thank you.
All right, any questions from the commission for John? Same question then. All right. Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item 15 with stipulations. I did have a speaker request from Brenda Howard. Would you like to?
Just here to answer any questions.
Okay, that's what I thought I should ask before. So Mike made the motion to approve with stipulations, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 16.
Okay, Commissioners, we're excited about this opportunity to bring forward this policy. It's something that's kind of been in the works for several years. It's come to a culmination recently as the advisory board for affordable housing was recently put together by several entities here in the community. I've participated in that for the last several months, and recent discussion with the mayor about the need for the city to take a further step in the direction of providing opportunities for affordable housing. It would be a great idea for us to have a policy that outlines how we can move forward in that direction. So we have been talking about several things in the past, one of which is accessory dwelling units. That would be covered underneath this policy, and you will be seeing an ordinance amendment coming forward on that again soon to be discussed and hopefully approved. With that, I'm just going to turn the time over to Sarah Hansel, who has a presentation, and either she or I can answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Ken. I just have a short presentation to talk about this policy a little bit more. So what this item does is it kind of establishes a first version of a policy in which the city formally acknowledges that Rapid City has a housing affordability issues, and then lays a foundation for how we can begin to proceed to kind of address some of those issues comprehensively. This policy really draws on a lot of existing goals and recommendations that are already established in the Plan Rapid City Comprehensive Plan. So we want to reiterate those and kind of continually come back to those. We're drawing on those for looking at how to proceed with this. It also sets some definitions for how housing affordability is considered in different contexts and how you might look at a definition for what it means to have a unit that's affordable to you based on your income. And the other thing that this policy does is it begins to kind of formally commit staff and resources to looking at this further through an affordable housing strategic plan, and something that the Planning Commission in particular will be interested in are code amendments that we can bring forward that will help to reduce barriers to providing more housing in Rapid City and start to encourage the development of more affordable housing specifically. The strategic plan, as outlined in the policy, will also kind of look at what are more specific housing needs in this community based on the people who live here, and what are the specific housing types that might be missing from our housing stock that we would want to encourage through any code amendments. I just want to take a brief moment to acknowledge the study that was completed last year by the Black Hills Knowledge Network and commissioned by the John T. Vukurovich Foundation. This is a quite robust analysis of kind of where we're at today, and they completed this study in order to help the Rapid City community understand the local need for housing affordability. And there's a lot of really great information inside of the study. If you've not had a chance to take a look at it, it is linked to the agenda, and it is a really good resource to kind of create a set of context for where we're at with housing conditions today based on demographic and economic trends and our actual housing stock. So we will be continuing to use this study as a foundation and build upon it. The graphics on the right are an example of some of the analysis that is in this report, looking at what are the price ranges of housing in the ownership market as well as the rental market, and where there are gaps based on the incomes in our community, because that's kind of what we're looking at, how our incomes are relating to housing costs. So in preparing to bring this policy forward, the Community Development Department released a public opinion survey just to kind of take a pulse on the community and kind of see what some thoughts on affordable housing are, and put out some of the suggestions as far as policy interventions that the city can take. So we released this survey mid-July and have had over 1,000 responses to the survey. We put out copies of that for you to take a look at in more detail if you'd like to study that more in depth. But here's just kind of some highlights of what people had to say. 93% of respondents agreed that more housing, affordable housing options are needed. On the topic of ADUs, 86% of people who took this survey supported ADUs overall. And then of that 86%, 59% supported an ADU in any format, whether it be within a structure, attached, or detached to a structure. So I think that's an interesting point to look at. We asked people what they thought were the most importantly needed price ranges of housing to them, and the most commonly cited needs in the ownership range were for $50,000 to $100,000 homes, and the most commonly cited need in the rental area was $300,000 to $500,000 and $500,000 to $750,000. So it's quite a task for the city to be able to afford affordable units in those areas, but this is what the community is saying that they're needing. So it definitely kind of lends to where people are at with that. Oops. When we asked people what types of housing they thought were most needed, the most commonly given answer was small single-family homes at 85%, and then after that were sort of standard apartment buildings at 50%. And when asked about what types of policy interventions they thought would be most helpful, about half of them supported allowing smaller lot sizes, reducing permit costs, and creating new zoning districts that would lead to more affordable housing. So just kind of a snapshot of where people are at. There's also about half of the people who took the survey left open-ended responses, which kind of give a voice to people who are taking the survey and wanting to share their thoughts with the city about what kinds of policies should be considered. So it's really interesting to read through those and see that everything from housing for elderly and disabled people, there was a lot of comments about wages in Rapid City not being in line with what the housing costs are. So a lot of qualitative information that we can draw on as well, and kind of moving forward with developing an affordable housing strategic plan. So at this point, I just want to open it up for any discussion from the Planning Commission and thoughts on the policy moving forward, and would like to hope that the Planning Commission would support us in approving this resolution so that we can take it to the City Council and continue developing some of these policies further.
Thanks, Sarah. Ken, appreciate the presentation. Questions on this one? I've got a few, so, well, more comments, I guess. So if nobody else has anything, I'll jump into mine. I'm in a definite agreement that a policy like this is needed, and I really appreciate the work that staff has put into coming up with this and bringing it to the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. I just want to reiterate a few things that you may have mentioned that I definitely agree with. First of all, in order to make housing more affordable, there are many small changes that are going to be needed. You're not going to solve this problem with one code change or one particular solution. We have to look at it as increasing the amount of tools in the toolbox. And I would encourage, I think it started to happen, but I think it needs to continue to happen, to get input from the builders and developers on costs. It's hard for us as a regulatory body to understand what drives cost in housing, where, things like lot size, setbacks, those kind of things, how much they can help. And we really need to be making sure that things aren't affordable in theory, that they're affordable in practice, that what we change actually helps. The third thing that I'm seeing, the price ranges in the survey that are noted as being most needed, unfortunately, in my view, those are price ranges that have to be subsidized in some form. I don't think there's any code changes or any small tweaks that can be made to create $300 to $500 rentals, to create $50,000 to $100,000 purchased units. And I would just encourage all of us as a city to be thinking about how we do that. Right now, in my view, the only game in town is tax credit projects. And South Dakota is only granted a certain amount of those per year by the federal government, and that gets sort of split, East River and West River. I would guess East River getting a little bit more attention as usual, but it may be something that we need to start lobbying our representatives to consider. If we truly have the problem, and I believe we do have the problem that our surveys are showing, we might need more help than we can provide locally. And then the final one is just something to think about for all of us. These are easy changes to consider in theory: reducing setbacks, increasing lot coverage. When it happens next door, though, it becomes a different story. And I would include all of us in that. We would treat something happening right next to our house as different than happening in theory. But in order for all of us to make strides in affordable housing, we're going to have to get a little bit better at density. And I'm really excited on some of the new developments. Shepherd Hills is one that has some of these smaller lots included in a new development, and that is great to have that chance as a new development to do it. But existing areas are going to need to be redeveloped. And we have great ones in the city like Robbinsdale. We've done it in the past. I know we can do it again, but we have to consider the redevelopment areas, and we have to be strong in saying we as a city need this, even if it changes some people's perception of what their neighborhood is. Finally got some other people to chime in here, so I'm going to stop. Rachel.
I thought John was ahead of me, but well, thank you. Well, I just want to state my agreement with a lot that you've said, Eric. I think it's essential that we look at this. You know, in a lot of the responses, the open-ended responses, I saw people stating concerns for creating ghettos and slums and things like that. And I think there's some perception issues there, but I think it's also extremely important that we look at this. Just as Eric said, this is something that needs to happen in our neighborhoods. It's not something that, you know, you can stick in one part of town, because that's actually how you create a slum. You know, that affordable housing has to be actually dispersed. And because of that, we do need more mixed uses in existing neighborhoods, maybe even in neighborhoods that we feel like should be, you know, gigantic lots and, you know, things like that. So I just wanted to state my support for everything that Eric said, you know, and also really emphasize the point that we do need to consider this in our neighborhoods, and it's important and essential. Thank you.
John, you sure?
I was just going to let it.
Okay. All right, Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also am pleased to see this policy come forward before we start tackling ADUs. To me, that was one part of the bigger picture, and so I agree, and I do agree with a lot of things that Eric has said. I think part of it is you do want to incorporate the affordable housing within, you know, the whole neighborhoods across the city. But it is a struggle for some people to accept that, and I think when we get down to the nitty-gritty, it's going to be difficult to do some of those things. I'm glad Eric brought up the costs, because I also looked at that and thought, boy, if somebody could buy a $50,000 house, that would be amazing, but it'd have to be a very small house or something. And so I think taking the costs of the construction of those homes into account is important. I have a question. The question is, I didn't read totally all the stuff in that 96-page document that they had. I did skim through it a little bit. But between all the things that you've researched, how does other cities like Sioux Falls and Gillette and any place else that has issues like that, how are they tackling these? Are they having a similar policy? Are they trying to look at ADUs? I just thought I'd get some feedback from that.
Yeah, affordable housing is a big issue across the nation right now, and we've heard a lot of discussion about this in various national conferences, both the National League of Cities and the American Planning Association. It's a big topic. So there are a lot of cities looking at it and addressing it. You look at your larger cities such as Denver and Omaha, they already have policies in place. And so we have looked at some of those to say, okay, what are the components that we should be looking at in our community? And that's kind of informed our process in moving forward with preparing this policy. But as far as Gillette or smaller size cities in our range, I think they're all kind of in our basket saying, okay, this is an issue, we need to figure out how to address it. So I think we're compadres with a lot of other cities that are trying to address it.
Okay, so at this point, Sioux Falls does not have a policy, or they don't address it?
I haven't seen one from Sioux Falls. Have you
Yeah,
seen
I don't know if they have one specifically. I haven't looked to see if they have one yet, but that's certainly something we will continue to research as we develop the plan further and talk with our peers, our peer communities, and peer planning professionals.
That sounds good. I just would like to hear from them and how they are addressing ADUs, for instance, and those kinds of things before we take action on some of those items.
I know that Sioux Falls does have an ordinance to allow ADUs per the parameters that they've decided are best for their community, so they do allow ADUs.
Okay.
I'd like to pitch in on that as well. Even though a lot of cities don't have an affordable housing policy per se, a lot of them do already allow for accessory dwelling units.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I support the policy. I think is, when you're more comprehensive like that, I think it's just, I agree with Eric, down the road when you actually implement some of those things, it's not going to be as easy as we'd like it to be. So thank you.
Justin?
Thanks. I agree with everything everybody's saying, so it's a great idea and thought process to go through. I have a couple comments. One, I'll reiterate, doing what I do, the cost piece did jump out at me of, how are you guys going to do that? You're creating extremely tiny homes or you're getting subsidized, right? So I think that's pretty well known now. This is a question maybe or a thought, and maybe there's an answer to it, but just the way I look at it sometimes, you get a development in that's got a ton of homes that are $100,000. I could see investors come in and gobble them up. And I have no problem with investors and having rental properties and that kind of thing, but that takes away from people having the pride of home ownership and that kind of thing, which would allow the communities to thrive a little bit more, because we all know if you rent a property versus own it, you treat it differently, you treat the yard, you take care of it differently. So maybe there is a plan and maybe it's already part of the policy. I don't know, I haven't read it. But I just think of, I can see an opportunity for investors, which again, nothing wrong with that. But all of a sudden there's a bunch of $80,000 homes on the market, and instead of allowing people to buy those and have the pride of home ownership, there's investors coming in buying the whole lot, the whole block, and renting them out. So just curious if that's been thought through, and if maybe there is a plan to, and I don't know if you can give first choice to actual people who want to live in it and have it be their primary residence or not, but just a thought I had, because I agree with the idea of having affordable housing, and ownership is part of that though, not just rental. I think a lot of people want to be able to own their home, but you get a home, the market here right now, a home comes on the market and it's gone, especially under, $250,000, it's gone in 3 days. So, and part of that is people looking, and part of that is investors, and at that price range, it'll get gobbled up quick. So I just was curious if there's a thought or a thing to that. Thanks.
Yeah, so again, this is setting the stage for the creation of affordable housing strategic plan, and I think these are the important components that we're wanting to consider as part of that plan. So we've identified, certain areas that we're wanting to look at. But as we flesh that out into the plan, those are things that we will want to address. Certain of those we can give good guideline for or recommendations. Other ones, it's probably just going to pulling out the issue and identifying it and hoping that others can follow suit and help with that, because we certainly can't regulate all of that.
Right.
Thanks, Justin. That was a good point. John?
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the comments that you made on $50,000 to $100,000 houses and rents from $300 to $500. I could talk about this all day long, but I just want to give one example from yesterday. I put a house under we're trying to put a house under contract that was $125,000. That's a rarity in Rapid City anymore. This house, I kind of looked at it myself as a rental too. We try to keep our rentals as affordable as possible, but when you run the numbers on it at $125,000, taxes, insurance, interest at 3.75%, which interest is great right now, it's really low, which is nice for a lot of people, you're still looking at a payment of about $800 a month. So to make any money at all, you have to rent them for $1,000 a month. And that's just the market that's driving that. Now, of course, you know, if you pay cash for them and you only want to make 5% on your money, which most people don't want to, some people do, then you could rent it for $800 a month. But, you know, what the point I'm trying to make here is with these, because this is all market-driven in Rapid City, the only way to do affordable, low-income projects is with incentives. I've been working on some low-income apartments for almost 4 years now, which can be very difficult because of getting the financing in western South Dakota. Hopefully this November we'll finally get the financing on the first project, or the end of November, beginning of December on the first project. But the last project that we looked at doing was 36 units, and because of the fact that this is all HUD money and, you know, federal funding, the biggest cost we had when the project was done was property taxes. Our property taxes on every one of those units would have been almost $200 a month, because we are bound by HUD guidelines on square footage. If you're going to do 3-bedroom apartments for low income, you know, how you build, what you pay your employees. I mean, these loans and these incentives have so many strings, and how much it costs to operate them after the fact. This project had a profit margin the first 20 years. The profit was going to be $1,800 a month for the first 20 years. People do these projects because they have way more money than I do, and they want to help these communities in the long run. So, you know, and there's a lot of tax write-offs. So, but it is very hard to do. I don't know when the last low-income housing was built in Rapid City. Do you know, Vicki? I know it's probably been 20 years. You know, and the biggest part is the funding. You know, we know at this level, we need 1,300 to 1,800 units that we could fill up right away. We know that. We do a new study, market study, every single year. We know what we need to build, but if you can't get the financing, and I think that's, you know, this is going to help. I should sit down with you guys. You know about I think the smaller project that we're looking at. But we also have another project that we're looking at. If we could get the funding, we'd do 300 units. So, you know, we need to sit down. We need to figure out how to do this. Zoning is going to be a big help, but it isn't the fix. I mean, even if we do small lots with tiny homes on them, I've ran all these numbers, and you can't do something and sell it for under $80,000 to $90,000. You can't do it. I mean, you have to make a profit, or you have to know somebody that wants to give away a hell of a lot of money for the community. So anyway, that's just my thoughts, and like I said, I could talk about this all day long. I like the fact of zoning. I'm a little bit leery of some other, you know, what stipulations and stuff we put on it. Government mandating more policy for affordable housing is an oxymoron. I mean, they can help, but don't overregulate it, because every time you start regulating stuff, you add costs. So, anyway, thank you.
Thanks, John. One quick one that I forgot from my list. Just like on the comprehensive plan, this should be updated, at least reviewed by staff, and I think it always helps to sort of put that in the plan. You know, every 2 years we're going to consider this again and see if there's updates that we need to bring. And it could be, you know, as simple as, no, we don't see it, or yeah, we need to bring something up. But it's going to be a changing situation if we're working on it, hopefully. And so we need to take into account those changes. Any other questions or comments on this? All right. Rachel made the motion to approve the resolution to adopt an affordable housing policy. Is there a second? All right, Kurt seconded it. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll hear item number 11 now.
All right, item number 11 is a vacation of right-of-way request. This has been continued at the applicant's request from the July 25th meeting to, again, to this meeting, to allow the applicant to meet with staff in the past, July 31st specifically. Proposal is to vacate a portion of Wood Avenue right-of-way located on the south side of Knollwood Drive. It's the north side of the right-of-way. The south side is not being vacated. It would be a connection between Wright Street and Knollwood Drive. Properties abutting the right-of-way are zoned general commercial district, and it's located just east of the intersection of Knollwood Drive and Haynes Avenue. Here we have an aerial showing that the adjacent properties to the east and west are currently undeveloped. We do have a tattoo parlor that's a little bit to the west, and a furniture store to the north, and then a college further to the east. Future land use shows this is a mixed-use commercial corridor located south of I-90. We do have some residential to the south, but commercial along Knollwood and Haynes Avenue on that left side of the page. Here we have the major street plan showing I-90 going through to the north. We have Haynes Avenue on the west as an arterial street, and Maple Avenue on the east as a collector street. You'll notice that this area right here is the only other connection north-south between Maple and Haynes Avenue. And what this brings up is the 2012 Rapid City Arterial Street Safety Study, which identified that as part of improvements along Haynes Avenue, that the secondary street network off of Haynes Avenue needed to become better, including construction of Wood Avenue in this little area where it's currently not constructed. But it is recommended in the study that this section of Wood Avenue be constructed as improvements are triggered along Haynes Avenue with future development. The applicant's exhibit showing a portion of right-of-way to be vacated. And here we're looking from the furniture store on the north side of Knollwood south along that right-of-way to the east up. You can notice the change in elevation. It has been identified that the topography will create challenges for construction of Wood Avenue, but it isn't something that couldn't be done. Looking at the property adjacent to it, which is vacant, and then you can see the tattoo parlor. And then looking west towards the intersection with Haynes Avenue, where a median has been put in, restricting turning movements at that intersection. So portions of the 2012 study have been implemented, and as future development happens, including what could happen with Shopko on that west side of Haynes Avenue in the future, may trigger that additional improvements come forward. And again, looking at the furniture store, which is just north of this right away, and then back along Knollwood to the east. This is looking from Wright Street on the south, looking north. So where Wood Avenue would connect through, it would provide an additional area or road for people to get off of Knollwood, instead of having to go all the way to North Maple to the east, or being restricted to a right turnout at Haynes Avenue. And looking toward the intersection with Haynes, I believe part of the study is that as traffic volumes increase and development and redevelopment of property along Haynes, traffic impact studies and continual evaluation of traffic volumes will determine whether Wood Avenue needs to be constructed and whether this intersection, which is at Haynes and Wright, would require signalization. And then looking south along Wood Avenue, and it goes to Anamosa Street, which would be another signalized or signalized intersection onto Haynes. So another way to exit this area. So based on the studies recommending that this section of Wood Avenue potentially be constructed in the future to provide a connection between Knollwood and Wright Street, to provide a better secondary street network adjacent to Haynes. Staff is recommending that the vacation of right-of-way request be denied. And we do have Kip Harrington with our transportation planning, Steve Fruman with our city and Todd Pakash with Public Works to answer any questions regarding the study and potential need for Wood Avenue connection in the future. And the applicant is in the audience as well.
Thanks, Fletcher. Any questions for staff at this point? We do have a speaker request form from the agent for the applicant. Janelle, then, if you would.
Good morning. My name is Janelle Fink. I'm with Fisk Land Surveying, and I am here on behalf of the owner, David Ritter. Let's see. I appreciate you moving this to the end of the agenda this morning. Thank you very much. I always hate to take a lot of time when I know there are other people with other applications in the audience. I also want to take the opportunity to thank staff, both engineering and planning, who were very patient and were helpful in answering questions for me and providing information, so that's much appreciated. If we could maybe dim the lights so this would show up a little bit better. The intent of this request is for the vacation of the right-of-way of Wood Avenue, which Fletcher mentioned, and it would be to allow the owner of the properties on either side to utilize this undeveloped right-of-way in conjunction with the existing two lots. These two lots here are vacant on either side of the undeveloped Wood Avenue. There are some topographic challenges with the property, and the ability to utilize both the lots and the undeveloped right-of-way would provide more flexibility and potential for development. These are both long-standing vacant lots, and the right-of-way has remained undeveloped for many years, and they've never been utilized. So this is an opportunity to allow the owner a better chance at development. Now, in your staff report, there were 6 criteria listed that you were to or could consider or examine. 3 of the criteria were indicated as being met, 3 were not. So the 3 criteria that were not indicated as being met were that the vacation serves the interest of the city by removing maintenance or liability risks, that the property being vacated is no longer necessary for city operations, and that the land to be vacated is no longer necessary for the public use and convenience. So I'd like you to keep these in mind a little bit, and we'll circle back to those again when we kind of summarize things here. Now, I'm not here to tell you that your arterial safety study is flawed or that there's a problem with it, but what I am here to tell you is that when you look at it, there is a very practical application to this that comes into play. In particular, this is the introduction to the study. And first I'll tell you it's a 2012 traffic study, so it's 7 years old. And the data that it's based on are from 2007 to 2009. So the data and information is already 10 years old in this study. This is page 1 in the introduction. And what it tells you here is that the responsible investment of Rapid City resources in mitigating roadway safety problems is a difficult task. That's what I'm here to say. When making decisions affecting road safety, it's critical to understand that the expenditures of limited available funds on improvements in places where it prevents few injuries and saves few lives can mean that injuries will occur and lives will be lost by not spending them in places where more crashes could have been prevented. It is the City of Rapid City's objective to maximize crash reduction within the limitations of available budgets by making arterial road safety improvements at locations where it does the most good or prevents the most crashes. Okay, thankfully I'm not going to read the entire report to you, but this is a start, and it establishes that there is a practical aspect to this study. Choosing resources where it yields the best results or going for low-hanging fruit is a concept that I think almost all of us can understand and appreciate. And even the city has to operate on that basis at times. So, having reviewed the purpose of this study, I'll show you, this is their chart that they put together that represented the top 10 segments or areas where there were crash concerns. The segment on Haynes Avenue between Lindbergh and I-90 topped the list. Just real quickly, this column here tells you that there were 33 crashes, 8 of which were severe crashes, 33 were just property damage. Doesn't mean that this segment had the highest rate or number of crashes, but based on the traffic that used it, it ranked number 1. But there are other areas. When you look down at West Main Street, between Sharon Lake and Mountain View, there were 49 crashes, 11 of them severe. Highway 16 had 41 crashes with 8 severe. North La Crosse had 53 crashes, 20 more than our segment, 10 of which were severe. And West Omaha had 40 crashes, 12 of which are severe. So there are numerous intersections here, and even though this Knollwood intersection or segment at Haynes ranked first, it doesn't mean that it had had the most crashes or total crashes. So, and the information that we talked about and just showed you in the chart here indicated that there were the 33 crashes, there were 25 property damage, and there were 0 fatalities associated with those crashes, or with that particular segment there were 0 fatalities. The majority of the crashes in this segment that we're talking about on Haynes Avenue occurred at the unsignalized intersection of Knollwood Drive, and they were broadside type crashes or cross-traffic movement for people at Knollwood trying to get across Haynes or trying to either turn southbound or northbound. So, you know, through moving through the intersection. And based on the crash pattern, the recommendations in part were that a median be constructed or a raised median and that alternative road segments be considered. So this is the crash diagram that comes from the study. Lindbergh Avenue is down here, Curtis Street, Wright Street, Knollwood, and all the way up to I-90. And it's a little difficult to see at this scale, but these little dots here accidents and the way that they were configured. This is a close-up of the Knollwood intersection, which is too difficult to read at that scale, so I'm going to highlight it here. This is the Knollwood intersection. There were 33 accidents total in the segment. Over half of them were at this specific intersection. 18 of the 33, or more than 50%, were at Knollwood. And 16 of them were that cross-traffic movement, either trying to cross the intersection or move northbound or southbound. So if you, and one of the mitigation measures that was implemented recently and that they talked about, this is the little diagram in the study that says what you should do to improve things, was to create a raised median from Lindbergh all the way up to Knollwood, and then with an option of improving the access on Wood Avenue. Now, out of this entire area, what was implemented out of all that recommendation was the raised median right at that location. And based on the history of accidents, you would have reduced the crashes there from 33 down to 17 if you were just taking away the numbers that occurred there. I asked staff to take a look back for me. I said, is there a current traffic study? And they said, no, there isn't one. But I asked them to look back and tell me recently what were the crashes in this area. So since the median's been installed, instead of having 18 crashes, there were 7 crashes in a 3-year period from 2016 to 2018. 2 of them would have been prevented if they would have extended the median to the south from Taco John's. So some of these, I would say there's been a significant improvement or a significant reduction in the number of accidents that occurred in this area. So then I'm also going to take a step back and look at the chart. Now remember, we talked about that there were 10 areas that were considered...
Can we keep it on the intersection?
It is on the intersection. If you give me just a little bit of leeway, just a tiny bit, please, and I'm coming back. Excuse me. Of the top 10 segments, there were 4 that were ranked as high priority. That was the Haynes Avenue, from Lindbergh to 90, Haynes from I-90 to Disk, and St. Joseph Street, and a portion of West Main Street. So these 4 were ranked high. The areas in green are where they've actually implemented or done portions of the work. Of the Haynes Avenue, the only portion that they implemented was that very small raised median at Lindbergh Avenue. On the other one that they've actually implemented or done some work on was a low priority segment on Jackson Boulevard where they did some restriping. This is the last part of the 10 segments. Highway 16 hasn't had any improvements, but they say that it's under study by the DOT. And then West Omaha Street, which is a medium ranked segment, is scheduled for some construction in 2020. So what I'm saying is that based on these 10 segments and the rankings, there's been a very limited number of improvements that have been done, that low-hanging fruit that they're going for. So, and the reality is that not all of the recommendations for this study are actually going to be implemented or funded. So we're 7 years past that study date, and only a small portion of the recommendations have been implemented. And the city has to balance what they're going to do, or these improvements, with the aging roads and infrastructure that they already have. So when I asked staff if there was funding set aside for the completion of the Haynes project, which would be more median or the Wood Avenue construction, the answer was no. The staff report that you have indicates that the additional improvements for the segment, which include the Wood Avenue development, not included in the CIP plan for the next 10 years. Staff also mentioned to me that that doesn't necessarily mean anything because they have the ability to fund any project that they want at any time, which is a true statement, but they also have to balance the priorities and needs of the community and the other streets that we already have. So fortunately, by implementing that small segment or improvement with that median at Knollwood, the crashes at the intersection reduced by over 60%. Which sounds a lot like the objective of the study of maximizing crash reductions within the limitations of available budgets. That's that low-hanging fruit we were talking about. And as time continues to pass, the data becomes less current. A study today of this intersection would reveal differences in the number of crashes. It might even reveal differences in priorities or differences in recommendations that relative to this segment of Haynes Avenue. So the second part of, or their general recommendation was an improved network grid, which in this instance included the development of this undeveloped portion or segment of Wood Avenue. The theory behind this would be that Wood Avenue would redistribute traffic to the south and away from Knollwood Avenue. And one of the questions that I have is, if the network connectivity were so important, would it not have already been developed? Or why hasn't it been developed? Let's see.
If you could, try to start summarizing your arguments here. I've given you
I'm
quite
getting,
a bit of rope so far.
I'm sorry, it's really difficult to answer
Agreed.
a lot of these questions because there's so much more than what appears on the surface. Okay, this is the original plat for Airport Addition. It was created in 1930. This right-of-way has been in place and unused and undeveloped for 90 years. And so one of my contentions is, if it were necessary, it would have or should have been developed prior to this. Okay. Also, the roads that were created by the original plat document in 1930, the right-of-ways were all 33 feet wide, which is totally substandard by current or today's standards. In fact, if we were going to build Wood Avenue today, you would need to build it as a commercial street. Knollwood is a commercial street. Wood Avenue has commercial zoning. It would need to be a commercially zoned street. It would need 70 feet of right-of-way, both on these two lots, as well as the property to the south, to even connect through. So it needs 37 more feet of right-of-way, which renders these lots almost unusable by the time you take the additional right-of-way. Then there's the fact that, let's see, okay, that there are topographic challenges or practical aspects with constructability of the street. As you saw in the pictures, there's some significant elevation change on, through this property. There's 54 feet of elevation change in the 300 feet from the east side to the west side of the property. This cross-section shows a center diagram of where a 70-foot street, a commercial street, this would be the driving surface, would need to be located. The slope across the center of the lot is roughly 20%. For those of you that have some construction or design experience, you can understand the challenges or the problems of completing construction like this. Now, the city will tell you, or any engineer can tell you, that with enough money, you can overcome just about any problem that you have. But you also have to balance, how are we using that money? Does it make sense to pursue something that is so impractical and expensive? If you were to construct a road here, you would end up, this is the actual grade of the property here. This would be the road section. You would have to have retaining walls on one side, probably at least in up to 6 feet, in the other side up to 5 feet. When you put retaining walls of that height, now you need guardrails and safety rails to protect traffic and to protect pedestrians. So this is sounding like an extremely expensive and improbable construction for something that hasn't been utilized in the past 90 years. As an aside, there are also no public utilities here. There's no water or sewer in this undeveloped Wood Avenue. That's provided by the other streets to the north and south. And the utility companies, other local utility companies, also consented to the vacation. So it's actually not needed. And if you constructed that, you would be pushing traffic south into Wright Street, Curtis Street, and Lindbergh, all of which are, again, substandard right-of-ways. This is hard for you to see, but the right-of-ways range anywhere from 33 feet to 48, 41 feet, 50 feet, 50, 41 and a half. None of it has the 70-foot requisite for a commercial street or, excuse me, a commercial right-of-way. And if you push that traffic south, you're going to potentially create the pattern that was the problem in the first place on Knollwood Street, because you have an unrestricted intersection where people are going to try to do those cross movements. So now everything that you saved at Knollwood by creating that median, if you don't install traffic lights or do other medians, you've just pushed the problem somewhere else. You haven't fixed it. You haven't created it. Now, the budget...
No, we're at almost 10 minutes. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up pretty quick here so we have time for questions.
Okay, I'm really close. I'm just about on my last segment. I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask you to stop if you don't do it.
Okay. The right-of-way was actually vacated in 1977. There was a technicality based on the number of people signing the signature, so it was vacated at one point in time. Have the information here. And just to point out, Wood Avenue to the north was vacated here to allow development of these properties. So when you look back on the three criteria that we talked about, the vacations serving the interest of the city by removing maintenance or liability risks. If you construct this street, it is a maintenance and a liability risk to construct a street in that type of grade that's going to have those type of retaining walls. The other criteria, the property being vacated is no longer necessary for city operations. It wasn't necessary for city operations. It hasn't been used, and there is still a connection on Knollwood Drive between the east and west. The third criteria is the land to be vacated is no longer necessary for public use and convenience. It hasn't been utilized, and it isn't necessary. Knollwood Drive is fully developed. There's not an anticipation of additional traffic coming on Knollwood Drive between there and Maple. There's all of these lots, sans these two vacant ones, are fully developed. Haynes Avenue traffic is going to increase north-south, yes, but Knollwood Drive east-west, no. So when you look back overall on the recommendations of the report, the low-hanging fruit of the objective has been achieved by the raised median that was constructed at Knollwood. A significant reduction in the number of crashes. Finishing this segment of Wood Avenue is not going to reduce more crashes. In fact, there's a potential that it could increase them, or it would lead to additional expenses of the road, additional expenses of more median, or additional expenses of more signalization at the intersection. So when you look at this overall, it really doesn't make sense. It isn't a wise use of city funds to pursue this in light of all of the problems and the problematic construction and the fact that you're not going to achieve any more significant result. So from our perspective, we would hope that you would support the vacation, and which would allow the landowner a more reasonable prospect at development of the property. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay. Rachel?
I did have some concerns about, topographic issues, but primarily, it seems like we do need to maintain use of this property, this right-of-way in case if something's ever constructed, because there's no other way to get through, especially with restricted, turning movements. But I just wanted to actually just give the opportunity for Kip or any of the other people who know far more about this than we do to, rebut anything that Janelle said or, put their own comments. I don't know if I need to give them the opportunity, but I wanted to make sure they had it.
Fletcher, I'm not sure who to elect for that request, but...
I believe Todd would.
Todd?
Thanks. Sure, I'll start. A couple of comments that were made about the topographic issues. This is Rapid City. We have topographic issues on lots of projects that we do. There's roughly 5 or 6 feet of difference in the existing right-of-way. I think the presentation showed a 70-foot right-of-way. That is likely not what would be built just because of those issues and because of the lack of right-of-way now. We would probably have to acquire some right-of-way, but 70 feet is probably not what we'd be looking to do. Another comment about how our funding should be spent on our existing infrastructure. Studies like these helps us when we do reconstruct Haynes Avenue, which is 20, 30 years old right now. We would be looking at implementing some of these improvements like a median, perhaps a signal at right, depending upon what happens with the shopping center. And at that time, when we meet with property owners and try and sell them on a median, those side streets, those alternate access points are very important to get buy-in from those property owners. So by vacating this, we would be kind of harming ourselves and our ability to work with property owners. So if you look at Mount Rushmore Road, on the west side, that was a big issue because there's no other streets that wrap around to those businesses. That would be a situation that would be here too. So I don't know if you have other questions, let me know.
Thanks, Todd. Galen?
Thank you, and that did answer a couple of my questions too about the width of the right-of-way that would be put in there. I do see the argument of what Janelle's saying with you're just moving the problem down to Wright Street as it is. I think a lot of that would depend upon whether you get a signal on Wright and Haynes there. But so I'm still leaning towards keeping our options open and maintaining this right-of-way. I think it would be easier to vacate the right-of-way if we kind of knew what the plan was, what the alternative and what's going in there. So maybe that's a question for Janelle. At this time, do you have any idea of what's going in? And that may not be relevant to this, but I think in the future, if we deny this today, it'd be useful to see, think about, we could have had this if we would have vacated it and so on. So do you have any idea of what's going in there as far as a commercial development?
The owner's been examining several different options. The topography presents challenges for him as well. He hasn't decided on anything specific yet, but by vacating it, it would allow something maybe similar to what you saw across the street to the north. I doubt that you'd have as large of a building, but it would present an opportunity to do something similar.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it looks like we're in, pretty firmly in the general commercial area, so it's likely say commercial wouldn't be anything of residential nature or anything like that, it would appear. So, okay, thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that this property, or this street hasn't been used in the past, and we haven't implemented any road going through there. But I can tell you when I drive on the road that I'm trying to think of the name. Knollwood, thank you. Forgot the road. When I drive on Knollwood and say go up to the movie theater up at the top, when that theater gets out, it's just tons of people going down Knollwood to get back on Haynes. I purposely don't go that way because I don't want to go through that intersection down there. And so I go the other way. And a lot of people do, but most people don't. They go down to Haynes. And Haynes is already so congested with the interstate being so close. To me, if we don't have a second chance to put a road through differently, I think we're short-sighting ourselves, I think. If you go down and extended Wood Avenue and go all the way to Anamosa, you've got a lot of choices, and you've got a light there, even if we don't put a light up right at this point. So there's options that I think down the road that we should still keep. And so I can't support the vacation at this point, but I do understand the need for it from a business perspective. A developer wants to build, it's a lot easier to develop on a large piece of property than it would be two smaller properties. So I do understand the request and appreciate Janelle's thorough definition, and she always does her homework, so I appreciate that. So that's it, thanks.
Mike Klosny?
I also have the opportunity to use that road, and I actually would look for another, besides Wood, at least one more and maybe two more access points over. I think we often in the city do not have enough access, and we limit ourselves. We have neighborhoods that are cut off because we don't allow the access, so I also would go with the not vacating. I think it's important that we give access. We took one out, I believe at Mother Butler, the center there used to be an access road up there that was taken out. And so we need more there, even more than just Wood. So I would be going to deny.
Thank you, Mike. Any further questions or comments on this item? Okay. Karen made the motion to deny the vacation right-of-way request, vacation of right-of-way request, and Mike Quasny seconded that motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We've reached the end of the regular agenda, so I'd just like to make a short announcement and thank you. We have Kurt and Justin having their last planning commission meetings today. Kind of a bummer to lose two people off the commission at the same time. We've really appreciated your comments and your attendance over the years too. Both done probably better than I have. Good luck in your future endeavors. Thanks again. Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff would like to echo gratitude. We so appreciate what each of you do. These are not easy positions to hold, and the effort and the time that you commit is greatly appreciated. We do hope great success both with Kurt and Justin in their future endeavors. We have brought some caramel rolls for all of you to enjoy today, just as a sign of appreciation for all that you do. Thank you.
Justin?
Well, you're welcome for the caramel rolls. Right. Thank you, guys. I just want to say I've truly enjoyed it. It's been almost 2 years for me, and I really enjoyed excuse me, the experience. It's been a good opportunity and experience for me. Very good dialogue. I feel like it seems like everybody up here has a very reasonable approach to things, often different, but very reasonable. And we've had some really good dialogue and back and forth, and that's nice to see and be a part of, because in government, sometimes I know we're at the low level of it, but all it is people yelling at each other, but we're able to have a really good dialogue, and I get really good points from you guys, and maybe from me as well. But have appreciated my time. I appreciate the opportunity, and I've just really enjoyed it. It's been a great experience for me, and a great learning experience for me. So thank you guys, and best of luck to you as well.
And I would say, the thing I forgot to say is we're bummed to lose both of you from the community. It sounds like that's the reason, and that's always a loss. Kurt?
Yeah, I just want to say that I've thoroughly enjoyed this opportunity to work with, the professional staff, with community development, engineering, public works, the fire department, attorney's office. This group up here, it's, the professionalism and the commitment to the betterment of Rapid City and protection of the citizens and, the land rights and all that has just been a wonderful experience. And I got to say thank you, and sorry to be leaving, but I look forward to my adventures ahead, and thanks again for all your help.
Well, you guys want to move on second adjournment of your last meeting? All right.
Second.
Justin made the motion and Kurt seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.